What's up everyone, it's King Moose here with JCross X. Welcome you all back for episode 33 of Class Overview. For those who aren't familiar, the Class Overview series is a collection of informative videos where we'll be discussing the different classes in Fire Emblem 3 houses.
We'll be going over general information about each class, like their certification requirements, stats, abilities, and their overall strengths and limitations to determine their viability and what units are a good fit for each class. As per usual, these videos will be gameplay focused, so there shouldn't really be any major spoilers, but I advise you anyways to watch at your own discretion, and if you haven't played 3 houses yet, you absolutely should.
This episode will be focused on the Warlock class. It's a 4-move class with mage-like movement, which means it takes a slightly harsher penalty on water tiles compared to standard infantry movement, in exchange for a lower penalty on thicket, stronghold, and sand tiles. Warlock has 2 class abilities: Black Tome Fair, which increases damage of specifically black magic spells by 5, and Black Magic Uses times 2, which obviously doubles the amount of spell cast for black magic spells. In order to certify for Warlock, you will need at least an A rank in Reason, though it can be gambled on a bit lower. This is a reasonable requirement on most magic units, but it can be a little difficult on ones that focus more on utility spells, or dealing damage with magic weapons or combat arts rather than spells. While in Warlock, units will receive a +3 skill rank bonus to Reason and a +2 to Faith. These are pretty good since they're the main areas that most spellcasters want to grow in. Namely, since you're presumably starting from a base Reason of A, the Reason boost can be used to realistically pick up Reason level 5 at A+ rank, and Black Magic range +1 at S rank, both of which are very useful and synergize well with Warlock's class abilities. The Reason boost won't really be useful for any promotion options since every other magic class has the same Reason requirement or lower. The Faith boost can help you unlock the rest of your white magic spell list, and also to reach the A rank Faith requirement for Gremory, which potential upgrade to this class level 30. These skill level bonuses are identical to Dark Bishop, but otherwise it has a decent niche for generalist magic units due to providing a higher Faith bonus than both Darkflyer and Valkyrie as close competitors, while being tied with them for the +3 Reason boost.
Warlock's base stats are pretty standard for a magic class during the advanced stage. The physical stats are obviously very low at 8 strength and 12 defense, while the magic base is set at a comfortable 15 res and 17 magic. These could be considered standouts, but they mirror Dark Bishop's exactly while being only 2 magic higher than Bishop, so it's nothing groundbreaking. The rest of the stats are at a standard 30 HP, 12 dex, 14 speed, and 10 luck. As for the growths, they're actually pretty subpar and don't improve from mage that much, the only notable one being a 10% to magic. The HP growth is also at a +10%, which is obviously low given the fact that it's a magic class, and also has a +5% to both res and charm, somewhat useful for res tanking and landing magical gambits, but 5% is pretty inconsequential overall. Lastly, there is a -5% growth penalty to defense, which shouldn't impact you too much at all either. Moving over to the bases, and they are around what you would expect with a +3 to magic and a +4 to res. The Warlock boosts are nice and similar to Mage, which are a bit more defensive compared to its edgier cousin, Dark Bishop. Additionally, the class has a couple of extra +1 bonuses to its dex and speed, nothing crazy, but appreciated nonetheless. Overall, Warlock stats aren't the best, as while Mages were pretty good for the intermediate stage, Warlock only improves all these areas marginally at best. Compared to the kind of growths and boosts that physical classes get at this stage, they are honestly pretty bad. However, we tend to put more focus on the magic competitors for magic classes instead, and in that regard, the boosts of Warlock are okay.
Mastering Warlock grants you access to the equipable ability Bowbreaker. Similar to Tomebreaker from the previous episode, it grants your unit both 20 hit and 20 avoid when in combat against an enemy wielding a bow. Like the other Breaker skills, it's obviously very situational since it does absolutely nothing against any enemy who isn't using a bow. Bowbreaker might be even a bit more situational than the others, not because enemy archers are uncommon, but because most magic classes, including Warlock itself, don't have the mobility to pick them off easily. That being said, it can sometimes provide a good amount of value on maps that have a particularly high number of archers, or specific archers that are particularly problematic. It's helpful that you can check the map before you decide to equip this ability to see if it's actually worth a slot. Most likely you won't want to equip it, but like I mentioned, there are some maps that have a lot of archers like Crimson Flower Chapter 17, or the Leonie and Linhardt Paralog. The hardest part about Bowbreaker is actually triggering it, but once you do, hit and avoid are both great benefits for combat. It works on both player phase and enemy phase, so if you can afford to give it a slot, then it can flex into almost any build when needed. There's not too much to talk about with Bowbreaker, it's a very simple and niche ability.
The main edge Warlock has in comparison to a lot of the other advanced stage magic classes is Black Magic Uses times 2. Black Tome Fair is obviously great too, but another advanced stage class in Darkflyer also has access to as a class ability. Most thing unique Warlock has going for it are the extra uses of Black Magic, as no other class has both it and Black Tome Fair at the same time. The only other class that has extra uses of Black Magic is Gremory, which gives double uses of all magic, being Dark, Black, and White, all of which take up class ability slots. There are a lot of strong black magic spells in this game, such as Bolting, Excalibur, and Thoron. If you value these spells, then doubled uses will really come in handy. Additionally, even though there aren't too many fast mages in this game, the ones that can double will also appreciate the lowered strain on the spell limit too, especially for the lighter spells such as Fire. Although Valkyrie and Darkflyer have a lot going for them, Warlock at least has a little extra damage over Valkyrie given that it has Black Tome Fair. As for Darkflyer, Warlock has the better boost and growth for magic, and also can utilize guard adjutants, as well as the variety of grounded magic battalions. This is extremely relevant in the case of Darkflyer, as there is only one magic flying battalion in the game. Another strength in favor of Warlock over its competition is the fact that it's the one and only solid endgame viable magic class that is not gender locked as well.
Warlock has an unfortunate set of weaknesses to discuss. The main one is the movement. Warlock is still stuck at the base move of 4, which is pretty brutal at this point in the game, even if it has a bit more effective range than most of the physical classes. At the base release of the game, this wasn't so bad, since its only competition at this stage for magic classes were Dark Bishop and Bishop, which also have 4 move. Once the DLC released, Warlock now had to compete with a 6 move Cavalry magic class, Valkyrie, and a 7 move Flying class, Darkflyer, which both have Canto. The competition gets even more rough the more you think about it, since Valkyrie also has increased range in addition to its higher movement, and Darkflyer shares Black Tome for the Warlock, so both are usually much more versatile in combat. In general, this is the stage of the game where the mage problems of 3 houses are going to become apparent, and Warlock is a prime example of this. Despite its great benefits to black magic users, spells are inevitably going to start struggling for kill power compared to combat arts, and the mediocre statistical benefits, especially the lack of speed, just make this problem worse. Speaking of its benefits to black magic users, another weakness of this class that is essentially useless for dark magic users, which limits its pool of recommendations by a bit. For a class with this many drawbacks, you'd think they would at least give it a worthwhile mastery, but bowbreaker really falls short, and so this class ends up being disappointing in a lot of aspects.
We've decided on a final rating of 5 out of 10 for Warlock. If you remember anything from the Mage and Monk videos, you might think this is a strange ranking as both of those received very high scores and were placed into the S tier. However, the main thing that those classes lacked was strong competition. With the introduction of the Cindered Shadows DLC, the competition of magic classes in the advanced stage increased quite a lot with the addition of both Valkyrie and Darkflyer. Monk, on the other hand, had no competition at all. Meanwhile, Mage only had to deal with a male gender-locked magic class as well as a significantly worse version of Bishop. Warlock is still good enough for the endgame as his combination of class abilities is really good in all honesty, but if you just want the Black Tome Fair, Darkflyer, Dark Knight, and maybe even Mortal Savant can be better. Grimoire is also often considered to be the superior class as well, at least for females, that can double magic uses, even without having access to Tome Fair's innate class ability. As for unit recommendations, our best candidate is probably Dorothea, mainly for the fact that she will very much appreciate the double uses to her spells, mainly Thoron, Agnia's Arrow, and Meteor. Not only that, but she has both a Bane in flying and riding, and even though she could be good in the DLC classes, pushing past those Banes can be very annoying. If she isn't your dancer, then making her a Warlock is a pretty good stepping stone for her magic growth until you switch her to either Grimoire or Mortal Savant if you desire. Hanneman is also a good recommendation for the same reason, since his Reason spell list contains similar spells to Dorothea's, and as such he can make for a decent Warlock as well. Lorenz is also a decent unit in this class if you'd rather focus on growing his magic rather than just going straight into Paladin. He gets double uses of Ragnarok and Agnia's Arrow, 2 pretty strong black magic spells, and since he's a male he also can't utilize the DLC classes. This could also be used to transition him into Dark Knight later, or into Paladin with a higher magic for stronger frozen lances. Net is also probably better off on a Wyvern or in one of the DLC classes, but this class is extremely low investment for a unit like her, so it's not a bad place for her to grow her magic either. Having double uses of Excalibur is also a nice bonus. Lastly, if you don't make Constance a Darkflyer for whatever reason, maybe the battalion issue I discussed before, then she can utilize the class for extra boltings. Obviously, this can be upgraded into Grimoire later, but the class is serviceable enough if you want to use it for now. If you haven't noticed a trend yet, Warlock is a class that is a pretty decent and low investment transitional class, one that can be endgame viable given its unique class ability combo, but there are usually better options for units to go, whether that be later in the future in the Master stage, or just in the Advanced stage in general.
As the rating suggests, Warlock sits around the middle of the list in C tier. It's a forgettable class, not particularly bad, but not particularly good either. I do think its rating depends very significantly on whether you have the DLC classes or not. If you don't have them, Warlock is probably at least B tier. Bishop is more of a support class, so for offensive mages, its only competition is Dark Bishop, which, first of all, is male gender locked, and has a worse set of class abilities for black magic users. However, with the DLC, it probably goes down all the way to D tier due to how outclassed it is by Valkyrie and especially Darkflyer. You could argue even Dark Bishop is better since it is at least Hubert's best spellcasting class at the advanced stage, while it's hard to argue Warlock is really optimal for anyone. This makes it difficult to rank, but C tier is a nice middle ground that I think is a fair judgment of the class. It is perfectly usable, and it does have a niche with its combo of abilities that no other class has. Looking at the poll in my channel, Warlock is ranked pretty low even when sharing a spot with Dark Bishop, which isn't too surprising. Since it's such a simple class, I also didn't expect to see many comments about it, but from the comments that did mention it, the common sentiment is that there's really no reason to stay as Warlock long term, and I agree with that. It can be okay as a transitional class, but not great for endgame. That's basically all I have to say about the Warlock class. If you liked the video or have any thoughts of your own, please leave a like and make sure to comment.
I also recommend checking the description if you're not already subscribed to both of our channels.
Stay tuned for episode 34 on JCross's channel. We're moving on to the next advanced class. Dark Bishop.